Konnichiwa.
I am good. Actually, I'm not good. I'm so tired.
Why are you tired?
Well, I don't know when this is going to be airing, but we're recording this the week after falling back daylight savings time. And I don't know why, but this year it's just kicking my ass and it should be fine. So that's my question. How are you doing with the time change? Or do you get time change where you are? Because I know there's a few provinces that have wisely decided to stay on daylight savings time.
Yeah, no, here in New Brunswick, we're definitely we're doing the time change. This year, it snuck up on my wife and I completely. We woke up in the morning and the radio came on and the guy was talking about the time.
Yeah.
I kind of groggily, came awake and realized, what, did the time change last night? And then, of course, it meant that we had a whole extra hour.
Yeah,
So,
and it should be fine. And actually, it was the morning of, because I was in Kingston that weekend at a Queen's Players reunion, and we were up quite late doing Queen's Players-y things. And I was quite glad to have the extra hour of sleep. But yeah, it just didn't seem to translate to the rest of the week.
I don't understand that. You're going to have to elaborate. So you got an extra hour of sleep, but you somehow are behind on sleep.
I feel like that, yeah. I feel like it's just there's something about the circadian rhythm of the dark happening so much earlier in the day that it's just making me super tired, even though it's really not that late. It's just weird. Yeah. Normally it happens the other way around. Like normally when you're springing forward, that's like getting a little bit of jet lag.
But, okay, now I'm going to take us down a tiny little bit of a rabbit hole before we turn to our guest,
we should turn to our guest because I'm sure she's got thoughts on this too.
Okay, but I'm gonna add her into this. But I just wanted to ask you: do you? Maybe I'm getting too personal. Do you ever get blood work done?
Yes, on a pretty regular basis. So yes.
Okay, so everything's cool there.
I'm cool. Right. Yeah. My doctor's relatively happy.
I just wanted to make sure that our co-host is healthy.
Oh, I'm healthy. It's I don't know what it is about this year. It just seems like this year it's dark, really early.
Oh boy. Okay, what about Lynda Williams? Welcome to our podcast,
welcome.
Recreative.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And you're farther north than both of us, so how are you doing with this year?
It's dark. It's dark. It's not too cold in Prince George, but it's dark. So yeah, we do have the dark problem.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so before we go any further, we've learned a lesson in our fourth season of doing this podcast to introduce our guest. So Lynda Williams is a fellow writer, and I think we've been aware of you for a long time. You're the author of the Okal Rel saga, which is unique in that I know that you, and we'll talk about this, you bring other writers into that universe. A lot of writers kind of protect their turf, but you take a different approach, and I'd love to discuss that later on. Is there anything else that our listeners should know about you?
Well, in my latest incarnation, I am still promoting my universe, but I'm also running a blog called realityskimming.com. Reality skimming being the faster than light method of travel in my books. But on that blog, I am hosting posts by other people as well on themes. So you appeared in the About the Story theme.
Yes, and
which we are now fully booked for through the end of the year. And then in the new year, we'll be doing posts on the theme of governance, viewed through a fictional lens of some sort or through storytelling of some sort. Ideally sci-fi, but not 100% necessary.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's fun.
And you're up to how many books have you written now?
The novels, there's 10 novels in the series. And I also wrote multiple novellas. I have I call myself the obscure Canadian Tolkien because, like Tolkien, I worked in academia and I did this as a passion. And I did it with other people always. So I was always doing it with someone. A lot of it in the end with Alison Sinclair, who is my co-author with book 4 of the series. And it was sort of a natural thing to knit people into it in different ways because it just evolved out of play. But you take it through adulthood and various degrees in education and life experience, and then it becomes a 10-novel series. So wow. It's not like I always made a living doing other things, not writing, but It was a passion project. And people, when they get into it, can really get into it and, write me from Germany to get book 7, 8, 9, and 10, or,
Oh,
like
wow.
I've had people read through it in a week, all 10 novels, and go, "Where's book 11?" And I'm like, "Sorry." That was it. It was an arc from beginning to end that, so yeah, it comes from a different place.
So tell us about the Okal Rel saga. What do we need to know?
Well, I think the easiest and fastest way to explain it is sort of character-driven, dramatized philosophy, I suppose. Like it's space opera, and I'm going to be very honest about some of my influence fiction tonight that I'm going to talk about, for good and ill. But
Well, now you got me really curious.
yeah,
Yeah. Now I need to know.
but
Yeah, yeah.
it's epic and it's heroic. I was always a fan of the epic poem. And my dad used to read me epic poetry from the 19th century, and then I was into adventure, Zorro, and the Lone Ranger, and everything. Some of which feels very politically incorrect these days, but it was something that always was just, and the ancient Greek myths, and this business of stories dramatizing things about human nature. And then as I got older, I got interested in various themes, and so I would project those through the universe. Early on, things about gender, I was sort of a science, math person as a woman that didn't, I remember I had some feminist friends as a teenager tell me I had a male mind. I thought, okay, I've had 3
What?
children. I think I'm female. Um, and so there was some of that. And then there's also, the threat of nuclear war as growing up in the 70s. And you go, okay, how can we come up with a governance system or some method of regulation that if we have the power to destroy irreplaceable habitat, that we won't do it? And so I developed 2 methods for doing that in my universe. Of course, they're incompatible with one another. So when they bump into each other, a lot of the arc of the stories
Ah,
royal through that, and culture conflicts with the characters and the worlds they come from or the cultures they come from. And they're bioengineered, some of them, although they don't believe that. So there actually are kind of extreme versions of humans in certain directions. And if you want to know how all that happened, you can read the Laurel Experiment or listen to it on YouTube. So yeah, it's there's a lot, but it's
so
you either
those.
get into it or you go, this is really weird.
Well, that, yeah, and I think many of us who write that sort of thing frequently encounter that kind of reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was too weird for me, or yeah, not everybody's brain is wired for this kind of stuff. So those are the ideas that drive your fiction. What actually happens?
Okay, in the first book which is called Courtesan Prince in editions 1 and 2. And then in the 3rd edition, we're calling it Second Contact, which actually more accurately describes what happens. But the synopsis that Allison came up with actually was from 2 worlds that should never meet come 4 people who do. So the 2 sides of the
Ooh, great
universe,
line.
1,000 years from now in the future, you have the egalitarian, communist arbiter administration of Rayner, which is a very enlightened culture that is spanning multiple planets and underpinned by AIs that can't be corrupted, which is important. And the other side is a neo-feudal society that came from this bioengineered races that were developed to reality skim for humans. So they're kind of created as a slave race, but they don't believe that anymore, and the humans are the commoners there. So you have this kind of neo-feudal multiple races, like your elves and your dwarfs and things, but it's the Vrelish and Demish and other stuff. And then over on the other side, you have these highly advanced, very sophisticated, egalitarian, complex, advanced technological society. And they have completely incompatible systems of thought and how you prevent blowing things up if you have the power to do so.
Wow.
And they did meet 200 years before, and that didn't go well. The place where it happened is now called Killing Reach. And both sides have mythology around what happened there, but nobody really knows for sure.
So it strikes me that both you and Mark both write very thoughtful, contemplative, philosophical science fiction.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I
Yeah.
like to think so. I call it intellectual mind candy. And I had, like, people would ask me all the time, well, what is this for? What kind of niche is this for? Well, I said, well, I have 12-year-olds reading it. although I didn't think they should. And I have PhDs in computer science and religion reading it. So I don't know. And teenagers of all kinds and geeky people who are computer programmers. And I don't know who it's for. It's for whoever likes it. So yeah, I mean, but I like to kind of cast it that way because I think I was doing a lot of thinking over many years with my friend Allison as well, who's a very well-educated young woman. Well, old woman now. I mean, she's like my age. But, between us, we had about 5 postgraduate degrees. But in fact, there's a lot of sex and violence and love and war and conflicts and sword fights. So it's really character driven. It's very hard to explain it without talking about the characters. But once you start talking about the characters, it's hard to get to a high enough plane that. But a lot of there's scenes people would laugh out loud when they read. I had one young reader throw the book across the floor at one point because of what was happening. And then because she was in a wheelchair, she couldn't get it back.
Oh, goodness.
And she regretted her decision.
So yeah, characters, people love the characters when they get into it, if they get into it.
This does sound like something I would be interested in, to be
Oh,
honest.
that would be lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of, in the beginning, I was, very much talk about marketing and everything. I used to have to drink 2 beers before I could try and sell books. Because if you've been doing something for, I'll call myself the obscure Canadian Tolkien. Because, what if you ask Tolkien, well, what's your story about? You've got 6 words, make them all crisp. I don't know. Elves and dwarves, I don't know. Like, so, I'm looking now for the people that might get into it, be interested. And also to perpetuate the sort of spirit of the thing of collaborative, engaged, doing things with people kind of work.
So Tolkien his fantasy came from a very deep place in terms of his actual life as an academic, right? Like he was he studied all of the Germanic lore and so on. So is there a similar kind of connection to your academic background that informs your fiction?
I invented reality skimming while I was studying space-time physics in an enrichment course as a high school student in Bellingham, Washington. And I never did go into astrophysics. But then I invented arbiters when I was doing a master's in artificial intelligence. And my friend Allison is a PhD biochemist and physics student, PhD in those kind of combined honors thingy. And then she got an MD because she felt she wanted to do that instead. So the science, I call it science fiction with a fantasy feel because I couldn't get away with stuff. I wanted these cellulites to be really good at maintaining high Gs and be regenerative. And so I had that. I went and did some research on all that kind of stuff too. But then I would say to Allison, well, I want them to do this. And she said, okay, well, they're going to faint when this happens. And, okay.
Yeah.
So we have that, but it's in the background. So when there's things about plagues and stuff, that's Allison's wisdom. I did a lot of research on the sort of sociological side. When I wanted to create the Vrelish, or one of my groups of characters, one of my Sevolite cultures. And they're bioengineered, so they are not regular humans. They were bioengineered. They originally were all male, and then because they didn't wind up wanting to breed with the available females that were also Sevolite, the masterminds involved kind of made a female version. So the VRs became the Vrelish, and they had to create a female version. So it's basically a bit of a religious sort of echoes there, but the idea is that. Although they're kind of Amazons, they like hyenas have as much testosterone in their bodies as the males do, and they kind of have parallel cultural roles. I didn't want Amazons where the men were not important. You can be a male or a female Vrelish leader. It was interesting because then that biology derives different things about the culture. Mm-hmm. So my Sevolite races are all sort of bioengineered in one direction or another. And I just wanted to sort of test the boundaries of, how far can you go before people don't identify as human? Sci-fi always talks about being different and being strange, but it isn't really. A lot of it's pretty basic stuff in terms of the sociology. Yeah. So I kind of push that in a few directions, different directions, and then have them all interact with each other, which is where some of the hilarity results. And once you get to know the characters and the situations, that's where people burst out laughing because of some situation. But anyway, it's and they're all a bit larger than life because you have to be that way to successfully reality skim. You have to be regenerative enough to survive the radiation and that sort of thing, but you also have to have what's called grip, which is like a strong personality, any direction whatsoever, but you really got to get back into the game and not time slip into an indefinite future.
So I actually want to kind of nerd out on that just a little bit, because I'm working on something where at a certain point it occurred to me that, I need to figure out, some means of faster than light travel that, that hasn't been done before. So you've obviously done that to a huge degree with the reality skimming.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about how you derived your means of traveling faster than light.
Well, talking to Dr. Quigley at my when I did my advanced enriched science camp thing in high school. So, I mean, it is still sci-fi, it's still hand-wavy, but the idea is that there's shimmer and there's gap. And gap is the intermediate dimensions, like the universe at the time they were talking about it having 10 dimensions in the universe, but only 4 of which we deal with. In space-time physics, you're working with those 4, which is why there's time travel in my universe, but only forwards, because it's from my special relativity background in that time when I was inventing it. So you can time slip, but that means you come out of reality skimming in the future relative to your own clock. The idea basically is that when the shimmer and gap is how much of the gap dimensions you absorb. And that's what you have to psychologically, your consciousness has to resist it. And it's passion, emotion, sense of belonging and purpose are what matter. And so the AIs aren't very good at it. They kind of tend to blip out. And then the shimmer is the physical stress of how often do you, and you got multiple times a second, you go clickety, 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 in and out. But then if you manifest in space where there's any matter whatsoever, you get splattered against the inner hull of your spaceship. So there's physical hazards beyond just the exposure as well. And they're very, very strict about their space lanes. You don't want to mess up space lanes. That's an ultimate sin if you're a satellite. So there's a whole lot that's gone into the whole thing. And religion, the societies, the governance system, the sword law. Yeah. I read many, many books about the use of combat, personal combat, as a means of settling things without having a war. And decided you had to have a shared culture. In the Okal Rel universe, you have to sort of have shared lieges, all the ways that people would try and game the system and how you would try and defend against that. And yeah, so, I could go on forever on a lot of these themes, so I'll stop there.
It all sounds
multifaceted. It's well developed, deep and wide.
It all sounds deeply informed
and fun. Also,
and fun. Yeah, I mean, it's fun.
Sounds fun too.
Really sexy male characters that are very powerful that pass out having sex because they have high blood pressure. I can thank Allison for that. And cultures where you're trying to negotiate treaties and one side wants a marriage and the other side goes, we don't marry. That's against our culture and our women will kill us if we do that because it's, the reproductive approach for the Vrelish is very different. And so you can imagine some of the complexities there.
Okay, so this is your work. A question that we always ask at a certain point is, have you done your homework?
Oh, way too much.
Of course. Yeah. She's a professor. Yeah. Of course she has. Yeah.
All right.
I digested books about egalitarianism in order to invent the Grecian system of governance. And
I don't mean about your homework, about your work.
Oh, my homework. Yes, I did.
The podcast. Yeah.
I did do my homework. And I had so many things I thought would be a lot more impressive to talk about. But I decided I really should go with something the first thing that sprang to my mind.
Okay.
Yeah, good call. Yeah.
And we don't know what it is at this point in the conversation, so I'm hugely curious.
Okay, it's Tarzan of the Apes and also The Pellucidar by Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah.
Edgar Rice Burroughs. Oh my God. I've been waiting. I read for this.
All
Tarzan wasn't a ladies' man.
Pellucidar was
and scoop him up under his arms like that.
I love Pellucidar. That was my favorite of his series.
Yeah. I did like Pellucidar as well, and there was one thing I particularly liked about it, which is if you're a Pellucidarian, wherever you are under in the hollow earth, you could always find your way home. And I'm I can't. Like all the women in my line are completely garbage at navigating. My mother's to blame, I'm sure, and her mother, but all the females in my mother's line.
Why then did you choose this? I mean, apart from the fact that it was the first thing that came to your mind.
Well, Tarzan of the Apes was my passion as when I was young. Like, I don't remember how young exactly. I remember reading all the books. I remember gobbling them all up with excitement and then having this sort of moment when I thought, you know what? I think the first one is the best and the rest are kind of all going downhill from there as I got older, you know?
Yeah.
So it's something that you think about more at different times in your life. But some of the themes, I've read some of the background about Edgar Rice Burroughs, and you know he was into eugenics, right? Like he believed that Tarzan was superior because he was born of British aristocracy, and I think it was his father's family came from that background, and that's why he was going to be inherently superior. And you know that does resonate with some of my mother being from an English background. You know, she never said it in so many words, but you kind of get that feeling. My grandmother and my mother, and then my
Oh,
dad was from
really?
the other side of things. You know, the coal mining side of Wales. My mother's family were Welsh, but got co-opted by the English and said, "Yes, we'll be upper class, thank you." You know, so there's all this resonances, and then the bioengineering. I came to Sevelites out of that. And, you know, now people are actually doing that kind of thing. They're looking at repairing genes or changing genes to improve things. So that was a preoccupation in my youth. And maybe there was a bit of an echo of that in Tarzan, but I wouldn't have noticed it at the time. The dairy do, you know, the law, who was the woman who wanted him that he never wanted, but she was powerful. And my middle name's Jane. So, you know, Tarzan and Jane. I used to
Yeah.
get teased at school, you know, where's Tarzan? And there's just a lot of things about it that when I go back and look at it, even though I can't entirely remember all of the stories, I think, yeah, you know, I really loved that stuff. And some of the epic, the hand-to-hand combat, the visiting different cultures and discovering people, and then you go back and look at what he was actually sort of projecting through some of that, and you think, okay, I'm glad I grew out of that as well. But you take away from it what you bring to it. So you know, I mean, I never, who knows, maybe because of that book where there were oppressed males, I didn't want the relish to have have the males be subordinate to the females in that matriarchy thing. But all of those experiments that he would do with different cultures, and
So you feel it did seep into your later work in the
yeah,
Okal
yeah,
Rel saga?
and you know, like I used to get asked by some feminist writers or women
Yeah, that was
when
my
the first three books, or the first 3 or 4 books, maybe the first 5 books were out, they would say, "Why are you writing about men?" In the later books, although they're not as much out there because that was towards the end of my days with Edge, and there was only like 200 books or so made of each of the later ones. But the women feature far more because by that time I was in middle age and starting to think about more complex issues, right? So I still have my sexy guys sort of rampaging through the story. But why were there so many sexy guys? Well, I mean, come on. I invented most of this when I was a teenager. So, you know, I used to like watching Tarzan movies.
Which I believe starred Jock
Yeah.
Mahoney, if I'm not mistaken.
There were so many of them. Yeah. Yeah. I was just, when I was preparing for this, looking through some of the video footage, like on YouTube, of the different Tarzan iterations. And it really struck me too how, like, the last one I looked at, it was really a sort of Jane's going to fall for him because he's a black Tarzan that, and they're going to save the environment together. Right. So, you know, these things, they all evolve.
Yeah, interesting.
trying to
Now,
pull it out of the 18th, 19th century. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's maybe what he was influenced by. I mean, he was
Yeah.
writing in the 1912,
Yeah.
1915.
Yeah, he's it's a very Victorian almost though the
His
aesthetic
influences.
of those stories.
And Puritan.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you have the same experience I did? I think I ripped through the Pellucidar series, and then like I read the Moon ones, and then I got into John Carter Mars, and I felt like I shouldn't read Tarzan because that was my kid brother's thing, so I didn't want to steal any of his books. So, but eventually I got through them all, and I said, "Okay, can I read your books?" He said, "Yeah, fine." And I think I was like the second or third Tarzan book, and I went, "Wait a minute, these are like I was 12 or something. These are all essentially the same story."
Yeah.
Sometimes
the first book is really good.
Yeah, sometimes it flips, right? Sometimes it's like the female character has to save the male character, but it's usually
Not very often.
the
Yeah.
civilized one saves the uncivilized one. That's the story.
Yeah.
And then I kind of went, oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah. I mean, I
very
think
colonial.
Very colonial.
It is.
100%. It's super Victorian. Yeah.
And he's also, there were other ways. I remember being thinking, okay, so Jane and Tarzan, great specimens of mankind, and they get married, they love each other dearly. They only have one kid. Like, what's that about? And I remember that bothered me for a while. And I remember at some point as a kid thinking, just a minute, Tarzan's got a grown son. He's got to be at least 40, or close to it. He's still going to be swinging through the trees, but for like
he's,
the next
he's Tarzan with the dad bod.
So yeah, you don't understand when you're absorbing that sort of thing, like kind of breathing it in as a kid.
Yeah.
You don't understand the complexities and you're in it for the romp. And definitely by the time I had got to the end, I was starting to think. I used to feel sorry for La. I would think, I mean, she's not all bad. Yeah, she sacrifices the odd person, but she really does love him, and he's just being, really,
obstinate.
Now, I wanted to ask you: were you at all offended, as so many people were, Tarzan fans, by the Crash Test Demi's song that I was singing in the beginning when you mentioned Tarzan, Superman's song?
Tarzan.
If I'd seen it, I might have been, but no, I probably wouldn't. I don't know. Like, tell me what is it about?
Well, we don't want to pay for we don't want to pay for the song rights.
Well, we can get away with under 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the first lines of the song are, Tarzan wasn't a ladies' man. He'd just come along and scoop him up under his arms like that, quick as a cat in the jungle. And then it goes on to say, Clark Kent.
There was a real gent.
There was a real gent. Yeah. He wouldn't be caught in no jungle
escape. Dumb as an ape.
Dumb as an ape. So all the Tarzan fans were deeply offended by the song. But I guess you...
No, I think that, it's fair game. You get to be that well known. And Tarzan's been resurrected in so many different ways that I don't think Edgar Rice Burroughs would recognize. That I think it's pretty much a meme in the world these days. That's what's going to happen. But
okay. Now you guys, you also mentioned the pellucidars. So I'm not as familiar with the Edgar Rice. Tell me about, what is that all about?
Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Oh, well, I've seen that movie.
Yeah,
but
so
maybe
there's a guy in the Sahara Desert, David Innings, I think it was. Is that right, Mark?
Oh,
and he
I'll look it up if you want.
Finds a guy he's got a mole. He inherited a mole from a mining thing, and he drills down into the earth. Like, I don't know why you just decide you're going to drill down into the earth if you've got a mining mole, but he does. And he discovers that there is a lost ancient world of prehistoric monsters and humans living in the center of the earth, in the hollow earth. And of course, there's a beautiful woman.
At the Earth's Core was the first one.
Yeah. And then he's got a friend, a scientist, who goes down there with him to help out. So many adventures are had. Again, it's this land of many different cultures and speaking animals, like animals that have a human culture.
This was a popular theory for a while before it was disproved that Earth was hollow and that there was another whole prehistoric world in there. One of the books,
Son of Stone comic books, which was also based on that idea.
Yeah, and one of the books, they go to the South Pole, and there's a way in to the hollow Earth or the South Pole.
That's right, and that's how the humans got in. Or some of the humans got in. Yeah, some of the bad humans, I think they were descended from bad bunch.
They're pretty exciting.
Called the Mahars that are actually intelligent beings that are based on pterosaurs. And they've enslaved the humans. And I've always been fascinated by this idea of, a race and a master race and a subordinate race, and then it gets flipped. Or, what if there's a good Marhar and they're trying to help you and you befriend it, but then you're going to exterminate its entire species? I resonated with that with your book, Joe, about they're talking about, well, I know these guys have been killing everyone and slaughtering the cats and everything, but they are slimy, but we're going to be committing genocide here if we kill this last guy. I mean, that idea has always fascinated me. What about the enemy, where there strike a common resonance between enemy and your own kind, and can't we find a better solution than we just got to wipe out one side? And so that's in my work too. And I was, looking back to the Pellucidar stuff and discovering the Marhars. What about the good Marhar? We want to kill them all?
He's got to be really good.
Yeah. But there's that oversimplifying. And even Edgar Rice Burroughs, who's presumably now interpreted and probably truly was, racist and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Even he has some of these people from the inferior races or people from the bad guy group that are befriended by Tarzan or by one of the protagonists in Pellucidar, and then help the good guys. And I always felt very strongly that if there's people like that, they should get rewarded somehow, that there should be some education going on there about, well, maybe what your species is doing is wrong, but we shouldn't exterminate you.
So some justice. Yeah,
some bridge, universalist bridge of some sort. So there's characters in my universe that are all about that.
So you're kind of, in a way, your work is building a little bit on these oversimplifications.
Maybe reacting against the extermination of the Marhars, yeah. And then once they exterminate them, of course, then he has to bring back a few that haven't been exterminated yet, because he needs the bad guys. It's like the Daleks with Doctor Who. We got them all. Oh, no, not that one. Now there's another million. Yeah. And that always bugged me, as well as why doesn't Tarzan have more children? Because I just thought, well, can we just, if we defeat an enemy that's incorrigible or whatever, can we just be done with that and not just bring the same ones back? Like, we find a new thing to go after.
Somehow the Emperor returned.
Yeah.
It does seem like these super successful, famous writers do often return to the same formula. I've been wondering recently if that has hurt other writers, who don't do that, who do introduce more complexities. Does that make their stuff actually less marketable or saleable?
I think so. I mean, I think Tolkien lucked out because his son worked for a publishing house, and he got his books into circulation with the sci-fi cons at a period when that movement was growing.
Right.
Because it's pretty dense. I mean, I was a pretty avid reader and pretty sophisticated reader. And the first time I tried to read Tolkien, I gave up. And then I picked up again another, 5 years later or something. I don't think my stuff is quite that dense in terms of, being, going through the minutiae, because he's got such complex, beautiful background stuff. But I do believe that the market, like when I was in the professional published world, and I was going to these events, and they would tell you, okay, so how you've got to describe your work is it's Bambi meets Godzilla, or it's Harry Potter but set in cyberpunk.
Yeah.
And I thought, I just don't know how to do that about the Okal Rel universe. And I don't know why I would, because I wouldn't read Harry Potter set in cyberpunk. But people want to see, and they want to connect with things they're familiar with.
I was out selling books yesterday, and because I'm aware of the reaction to my work and other work that is similar, I find myself wanting to say to people coming to the table, they'll pick up a certain book that's on the table, and I'll say, I want to say, you're going to need a brain and imagination to appreciate that book.
Yes.
That's anti-sales.
Yeah.
I know, but maybe it isn't, because I always felt there's no point trying to sell like the Okal Rel universe to somebody who wants a quick murder mystery with not much characterization and wants to be able to recognize the setting as real life. What's the point of that?
Yeah. You don't really want the wrong people reading. And that sounds horrible, the wrong people. But I mean, people that aren't going to like it or appreciate it, because that's not going to help anyone. If
it's not your kind of thing, then, I mean, I've had great reviews by people who said, I would never have bought this book just based on the cover. but I really enjoyed it when I read it because of this, this, and this. So people have a lot of preconceived ideas, and if what you're doing is really quite different, it's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say it's Star Wars meets Tolkien or something, but what am I really saying about it by saying that? Not very much. Yeah. But I've had an idea, and we, maybe we'll do this one. Maybe we could figure out how to do this together somehow as publishers. And that is doing things where people react to getting into a more complex story. So, if you're reading your book, for example, and you were to do a little video clip of, okay, this is where I'm at over these 3 pages in. Here are the questions I had. This interested me, and then go through the whole book that way in little vignettes and pump those out on the internet, because people have a short attention span. And maybe if it was somebody genuinely getting into a thing that was more complex, I might not like everything they said about the Okal Rel universe, but at least that way there would be some exposure of some of what's inside, instead of just trying to constantly try and find some oversimplification or something somebody can immediately understand. I don't know. It's I'm exploring in my own mind these days how I can try and break it down. I've always had people want to try and do things with it. I've people who've recorded for it, and on YouTube you can listen to people reading it. I have a friend right now who's looking at trying to do it as an AI generated little mini videos, and I don't know how that's going to work because I really can't see it. But anyway,
is that even acceptable these days? Because there's such a backlash against the use of AI for anything to do with storytelling or generating imagery.
Yeah, I suppose. I think I don't think it would be if it was like, brand new maybe, but if it's being used as a way to get people to notice and maybe get interested in some of the ideas that they would otherwise not encounter because they won't read past the first paragraph. I have this thought that is that instead of the media is the message, that the message can play in all media. And if you can recast it in a different media, if you get somebody who never reads, they might look at it and take what they can get from that and never pick up the book. But if they have a friend who does, they might tell them about it and they might pick up the book. It's I've got to get all my books rebooted pretty quick here, but before I die kind of thing, which at our so that I'll actually be able to provide the whole set. Right now they're only available the complete set on Kindle on Amazon. And the books, the later books in the series, book 7 in particular, which is the one that books 1 to 6 are fairly available secondhand, and book 7 isn't. I used to go out and buy them, and then I'd sell them to people who wanted the next book in the series when I went to a con, and with the ones I'd rebooted so far, and I would sell them to people for $20 because that was the cover price originally. But to get book 7, sometimes now when I look for it online, they want $135 for it.
Oh my God! Yeah. So you're saying that your books are not available in print now?
No, not only the Edge ones, the first editions.
Oh, because they originally came out in Edge, and you don't have the rights back to them, or?
I do. I bought my rights back.
Okay.
So you could reprint them.
I'm working on that. Yeah.
That's doable.
I've got the first 2 reprinted in the 3rd edition.
Yeah.
I had a 2nd edition that was just 3 books, the first 3. And then the artist that was doing with me kind of went away. And then I got a very enthusiastic Michelle Milburn, who is she's a graduate of Emily Carr, great artist, and a very computer geeky person. And she and I teamed up as Reality Skimming Press, and we started rebooting the 3rd edition. I got to pick up on pace on that because I can't keep buying the later books.
Yeah, that sounds expensive.
I'm not buying my own book for $135.
I have some advice just out of interest because I've got the rights back to my first novel, which is now out of print. No, I have it. It's available as an ebook, but I thought, well, I'm going to do another edition. I might as well I'll open up the hood and see what's under there. And then 6 months later, I'm in the middle of this crazy rewrite. Well, I've pulled the whole thing apart and I'm rewriting the whole book. And it's like, oh boy, that was a mistake. Because I've now abandoned that because I'm like, I have other projects that are new I need to finish.
There's always things you could, but the whole thing is sort of a tapestry from book 1 to book 10 that evolved over like 40 years.
So you can't really change too much, can you?
A lot of it, there's things in book 1 that aren't resolved until book 10.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of wiggle room in that. If I ever write again, as opposed to doing the publisher thing and getting things rebooted, I might write something set in the Okal Rel universe, but of a kind of entirely different nature in a different time.
Right.
But we'll see. We'll see. Sometimes I think I might do that. And sometimes I think I'd rather just, like a lot of the actors do, retire to the director role and do the publishing thing and figure out how to share with the world and get people interested in the Okal Rel saga so that it's I can find those people that will love it.
Now, I wanted to ask you more about the collaborative nature of it. Can you tell us more about that? Like, who has toiled in that universe, and
okay, sure.
what have they done with it?
Yeah, I mean, I was when I was researching the Tarzan thing, there was actually a bit of a resonance there because, although I think Edgar Rice Burroughs at the end was a bit of a hack and he was doing it for money, and he actually said disparaging things about the very magazines he tried to publish in. But his daughter married one of the first actors in for the first Tarzan movie, I think it was, and became a voice actor for Jane. And his son became an illustrator for some of the books. So there is that kind of family involvement. And right. I had that definitely. I used to read. First of all, I never stopped playing. I used to play imaginative games with my family and my friends at school, and I'd invent games, and we'd ride our bikes around the universe, saddled up like horses. Which is probably not a very safe way to ride a bike when you're tied a skipping rope to the handlebars and you're steering it that way. But anyway, like we would play these games based on TV shows, that we'd seen and stuff. And I just kept doing that with Barbie dolls as I got older, with one friend in particular. By that time, the Okal Rel universe was sort of emerging. And then when I went to university, I met Allison, and she and I were doing it pretty intensively for many, many years, like decade or two, on and off. She's the one who hooked me up with Edge, and we put out book 4, and then we went back and did 1, 2, 3, but then she wasn't wanting to be part of it anymore. But there's big chunks of Allison in some of the later books that was stuff we'd written already before she decided to leave. And she just said, you go ahead and use whatever you've got of mine. I'm not fussed about it.
Right.
And then once the books came out, because I was reading them aloud to my family as I was writing them, my daughter and her friends and my daughter's friends, both my older daughters, they would come and listen on the weekends too. And one of them, Chrissy, she actually made up a little song about oleander, like it's this golden demish guy who's a virgin at 83, because they're bioregenerative, they don't die, and the golden demish are very particularly Puritan in some ways. Anyway, it's one of those long stories that won't fit, but she would make songs about him. I went out to schools and I did presentations, and I had a teacher here in Prince George who had her English class doing dramatizations from the Okal Rel universe. And then she said, I have an idea for a story. Or somebody else would be reading the books when I went to sci-fi cons, and they'd say, well, what about this? What if this happened? And I'd say, well, why don't you write that? And so we started doing anthologies of stories set in the Okal Rel universe. Mm. And Edge put out, through Absolute Express, they put out 6 of those that I edited that were stories by other people set in the Okal Rel universe. And then Hal Friesen, who was a physics student here at UNBC when I was working here pre-retirement, he did 2 or 3 stories like that. And then he wound up doing a novella about the character that was in those short stories. And Chrissy did anthology. She did 2 novellas about her character that was in those short stories. And those characters, both Hal's and Chrissy's, are in the later books. They have cameos and they appear in the series later in the series in an appropriate way. So there was that. And then there was people would do fan art, and I'd put that up, or I'd even use it in some kind of a handout for a con or something. Michelle got involved doing art and wound up doing some of the covers. It was all that kind of stuff was just burbling along in kind of the spirit that it developed in, which was we're playing games. And then as it got more and more sort of harder to pull strings, because it's the tapestry is pretty tight knit, people would do spin-off things. So I did the anthology with Jeff Dolton, the anthology that is the Megan anthology. And Mega is a very early Earth world, like it's, I say Precambrian in one of the descriptions of it, which is wrong. It's much later than that, but it's pre-dinosaur kind of world. And the idea is that they crash land there, and how do people survive? The people who wind up stranded there. So people wrote different separate stories.
Right.
And then there was a guy called Craig Bowlesby who also wrote short stories and novellas for me, who was my fencing advisor, because sword law in the Sevolite side of the universe is in personal combat sort of gig, but it's a legal system. So it's something that's very regulated and observed, and there's rules and everything. Anyway, he rewrote all my fencing scenes. So I do the politics and the characterization and the setup. And then I'd say, okay, now write this, Craig, as if it's a real sword fight, because he taught fencing. And so any realism to do with the fencing in Okal Rel universe is owed to Craig.
Is there any of that activity still going on, or are people still riffing off the overall saga?
Not really at the moment. There's a little bit. I had somebody record Righteous Anger, and it's book 2. It's actually available to listen to on YouTube for free. So that was fairly recent. And I'm just kind of coming back up out of hibernation, having been sort of creatively anesthetized by 5 years of middle management at SFU University.
Yes.
That'll happen to you.
Yeah. So as we wind up, is there anything else that you would like to leave us and our listeners with about the work that you're doing?
Just the idea that everything's connected. You read Tarzan as a kid, you morph it through various life experiences into an Okal Rel universe. And being the writer and being the reader, I think about 1 in 100 people who read the Okal Rel universe created something for it. Or wanted to, and we tried to accommodate that. It's a very, I think, good time these days for people to get involved in creativity without feeling that they have to be superstars or make $1 million to do it. That's getting struck by lightning. It's okay. It's good. It's important. If it means something to people, does it have to mean something to 3 million people? Or is it cool if it means something to 3,000 people, right? I've had thousands of people read my books. I think I should be proud of that, not cringy about it.
Absolutely.
You should be.
And that's why I call myself the obscure Canadian Tolkien. Because I got so tired of people saying, "Oh, I read your books. They ought to be a TV series." And you got $1 million to fund that. I'm sorry, I haven't turned them into a TV series, but I'm not that well endowed.
No, but so great that they love your work so much that they want to.
Yeah, but then the enthusiasm, then there's no 11th book and the enthusiasm dies out. But then some of them I could at that original. I'm hoping I will do anthologies again of the books 7, 8, 9, and 10 before I die, because I'm on a clock now. I'm going to be 68 in February, so getting them all rebooted and getting them out there and getting people engaged in helping me share the story to get people into it and participating in the community of writing and reading and in sci-fi and out is my kind of mission in the world at the moment.
Mark, any last thoughts or questions?
I'm just thrilled we finally got to talk about ERB. Because it just seems like we've had a lot of people on the show who've definitely read Edgar Rice Burroughs, especially if you write any kind of adventure, science fiction or fiction. Like he's influential. And
it's so disappointing when you find out he didn't even respect his own work.
Yeah, and he was kind of a dick as well, like in his personal life,
Yeah, and a real marketing, like he was all over he formed his own company early on, like it was 2019, 23, I think it was.
Yeah.
Formed his own, and then he started divorcing wives and marrying younger ones and all that crap that you get into when you get too much power and influence. But at least he had his kids involved in the creativity.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Perhaps we should leave it there. Lynda Williams, thank you very much for being
Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you.
You've been listening to Recreative, a podcast about creativity and the works that inspire it. Recreative is produced by Mark Rayner and Joe Mahoney for Donovan Street Press Inc. in association with Monkey Joy Press. Technical production and music by Joe Mahoney. Web design by Mark Rayner. You can support this podcast by checking out our guests' work, listening to their music, purchasing their books, watching their shows, and so on. You can find out more about each guest and all of our past episodes by visiting recreative.ca. That's re-creative.ca. You can contact us by emailing Joe Mahoney at donovanstreetpress.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.